our presentation.
Imagine coming back to this room 20 years from now. 20 years ago, I gave my senior thesis on this stage. And I can't, it's crazy. It's crazy to be back. Just imagine, like, branch out 20 years from now. If I could do it then, I don't even think I could picture what 41 would be like at that age. And it's humbling. It's humbling to be able to come back and talk to students. And those of you who came, thanks for coming. I thought about, what would I want to tell my 20-year-old self if I could go back in time? That's a lot of what I put together, the thoughts I put together for today. When Coach Smith introduced me, I started thinking about a story, and I got a lot of stories to tell. I started thinking about what stands out in my mind as I think about the time at Siena, and lots do. But the one that comes to mind when I remember Coach Smith is we used to go to this basketball tournament in Iowa. The national, what was it called? National Catholic Basketball Tournament. And it's sponsored by Budweiser. Yeah, in a small town in it was in Dubuque, Iowa, at Loras College, and a group of Catholic schools would come together and play in the tournament, and we won a lot. We would go in and win, and this one year, it was probably my last year, I think year number 5. And I was eligible to win this award called the Bill Bradley Scholar Athlete Award. And I didn't really know who Bill Bradley was at the time. This was 2001, but my parents did. And I remember telling my parents, who are sitting right in the back row, I said, hey, I'm gonna win this award in Iowa, and it's Bill Bradley. And my dad said, Bill Bradley, I mean, he played for the Knicks, and he's a senator, and he's a Rhodes Scholar, and this was 2000. So he was also maybe gonna run against Bush and Gore in the presidential election. My parents said, make sure that when you get there and you shake his hand, because I was going to shake his hand at center court before the game, that you tell him your parents would vote for him if he runs for president. So I'm like, okay, I got it. I got my message. I'm going to say this. And I get to the moment, and I'm in my warm-ups before the game, and like 4 or 5 other kids, or 6 other kids are there, college kids are ready to go. And the local media is there, the Dubuque Gazette or whoever it was is there covering it, and there's cameras, and there's Bill Bradley at center court, and he's tall, and he's got stature. And I'm thinking, okay, my parents would vote for you if you run for president. Remember what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna walk up to, I'm feeling great about being in this position. And when it comes my turn to walk up to him, he looks at me in the eye, like only somebody with charisma can do, and looks right at me. And I said, if you run for, my parents like you, and he looks at me with his hand still on me, going like, to the end of the line, like moving right to the end of the line. I said, I don't think I got the message out. And he didn't run for president. You guys remember that? He didn't run for president, and you know, who knows? So the reason that comes to mind is because, one, it's funny. It's one of my more favorite stories from Siena, but it's like life can humble you especially when you think things are going well. Life has a way of humbling you. And in a good way, this humbles me. Being here now 20 years later, I'm humbled. And this is one of those things that I'm gonna remember for the rest of my life, to be back here. A little bit about what I'm doing now. I've talked to like 6 classrooms, and I don't even think these guys saw me talk once earlier today. I don't think I've done a good job of describing what I do for a living. So I'm going to describe a little bit about that, and then I've got a couple stories and a couple things that I would want to tell myself as a youth, and then at the end, maybe we can answer some questions and keep it interactive. What I do now, I work for a company called Stripe. Raise your hand if you heard of Stripe. The ones who heard me talk, everybody who heard me talk earlier today. Okay. Yeah, actually, half the room has heard me talk already at this point, so it's okay. I'll try not to repeat stories. But Stripe is a tech company in San Francisco, and they're small and growing fast. The work that Stripe does is it connects your bank to your credit card when you buy something online. So here, an example of that is when you buy something on Amazon and you click purchase, this magic happens where the bank from your credit card transfers the money to the business, and we don't think about it. The average person doesn't think about it. Well, that's what Stripe does. It connects your bank to pay the business, and it does this for lots of companies. So every time that you've bought something on Amazon, we're getting a tiny fraction of a percentage of that. So thank you for all of your support. That's what Stripe does. And so if you think, okay, well, what does that amount to? Well, if you think how many billions of dollars go through Amazon, a fraction of that, plus thousands and thousands of other businesses like Lyft or HBO, like a lot of the transactions happen and they're small percentages. So the market thinks this company is going to be a worthy bet. And it's the #1 private company in the world, or not in the world, in the US. It's the #1 financial tech company in the world. And when I think about how did I get here, it's not an easy answer. It's not like a direct path, like this helped me get there. The people I work with on my direct team went to Harvard, Duke, Dartmouth, Stanford MBA, Stanford, Scripps, those to name a few. This is my direct team, Siena Heights. And I love that Siena Heights is being represented in this company. And it's a point of pride, but if I went back in time and told myself 20 years ago, like, this is how it's going to work, I don't have an easy answer. Like, how did it work? I'm going to do my best to try to, for the students especially, to try to tell that story about how it worked. But it involves a few different things. And the big themes are find a mentor, ask for help, find your tribe, your people, fail a lot and learn, and then chase your values. So I'll cover those themes, but as we do it, I asked as the students were walking in if we could have them answer a question so I can keep it somewhat interactive. So Robin, you've got the questions, right? Let's hear one. Let's hear one, and I'm going to mix questions in rather than wait till the end. For the audience of 4 people who are watching on Zoom right now. Make sure we're mic'd up.
Okay. How do I develop a leadership mindset?
Okay, next question. That's a hard one. We'll come back to that one.
What is one piece of advice that you would give me that would help me now and later?
Oh, cool. Okay. Who asked that question? And who asked the leadership mindset one? Good. It's a good question. So good that it's going to take me a while to think. Can I come back to that one? Okay. And what advice would I give you now? And what was the other part? Help you for now or later. If I already told you this one earlier today, forgive me. But the thing I would tell you now, what year are you? Senior. The thing I would tell you now is it's going to be okay. That's what I would have told myself as a senior. I thought so much about like how I got to make the right choice and get the right job, and that it's permanent. If I would have realized how long working years are, God willing, we stay healthy, it's a long time. It's 40 or 50 years maybe we're working, and it twists and turns just like you shift majors. So I would say it's okay. It's going to be okay, and do the things that excite you. I'll come back to the leadership mindset one. Okay, first one. Find a mentor. I had a picture up here. It's facing me because I feel like he's with me. I don't know if you can, I wish I could zoom it up, but some know who it is and some don't. It's my first mentor here. This is a professor named Brother Frank Rotzart. And I'll tell you a quick story about him. I've kept this with me wherever we go, moved around the country, and I think about him a lot. When I first came to Siena, I took English 101 with him, and I was an average student in high school, not great, not terrible, this is in the middle. And the first assignment he gave us was, write the story about how your transition from high school to college, and do it in a half a page. It was really simple. Actually have it in this folder. I found it. Mark, I have, Dr. Sherston, I have an entire folder of stuff from your class too. Yeah. Yeah, this isn't your stuff. I have the paper in this folder. It's probably buried, but I read it a few days ago, and it was pretty simple assignment, but I freaked out about it. I thought, this guy's tough. I've never had a guy named Brother before his name. I went to public school. So Brother, and he swore a lot, and he smoked, and he said direct things, and he scared people. He was. So I thought about this paper all week. It was Labor Day weekend. It was like the first freshman weekend. Here's your assignment for Labor Day weekend. Write the paper. Write 50 words. Something really simple. And I sat there. I went back to my mom and dad's house over the long weekend, and I waited and waited, and I looked at it, and I'm like, it's not good enough. He's going to tear it up. This guy's tough. He's going to tear it up. I'm not a good writer. I don't even know if I belong in college. I was an okay student. So I finally just came to the mindset of, all I can do is the best I can do. And I think this is about the best I can do. This paper, it's okay. So I handed it to him, and then I braced like this. Who knows what this guy's going to tell me? I didn't know him yet. And as I anticipated all the red ink and all the comments, I didn't get any of that. After class, he hadn't even talked to me yet. I'd only had him 1 or 2 times. After class, he came over to me and he said, you know what? You might actually be able to write. And what? He said, yeah, your paper was okay. And then he turned and he left. And that was the beginning of a relationship that he became my advisor. He talked me into becoming an English major. I became his assistant. I graded his papers for him for work study. I did the hard work. Yeah. I spent time with him when he was at the nursing home. He had a stroke in Adrian a few years after my graduation, and lived in South Bend at, does anybody remember where it was? Holy Cross is what I remember. Yeah, and I would go a few times a year while he was still there and see him, and he lost, for somebody who spoke and wrote so articulately, he lost most of his speech. And I would sit with him, and he could say just a few words, but he knew what I was saying, and we communicated still. He passed away in 2007, and I got letters from the house that he stayed at, and I got a packet of the poems he wrote, and he'll always be with me. And it started in that first freshman year class. It started with him telling me that he thought I was okay, I was good at something. And I think about how much impact can we have on people if we just tell them what they're doing well. Yeah, a lot. It's actually what I do for a living now. I coach people and I tell people what they do well. That's really it. Coach, I mentioned I travel around the country, and for 5 years I was a public speaking coach at big companies and small companies and places like Facebook and LinkedIn and Google. And really what I was doing is finding the one thing or two things that somebody did well that they didn't think about, and I was pointing it out. I mean, it's all back to like that first conversation. So it had an impact, and I'll be forever grateful for that relationship. But what's the lesson here? One other mentor too. There was playing on the basketball team. You gravitate towards assistant coaches, and the guy that taught me a lot about how to be a basketball coach, Coach Smith, obviously, but Coach Al Sandifer. Spent a lot of time because I was on the second string, and he was the guy coaching the second string. And when I left and wanted to become a basketball coach, he was the one who was telling me, here, you should think about this, or here, you should approach this that way. And that was a relationship from here, and he's still here, and it means a lot that he's in my life as well. So why do I reflect on that? Obviously, it's meaningful to me, but when I got out of school, I got hired at Eli Lilly at 23. It's a pharmaceutical company, a big company. I was the youngest person by a long shot. Like, colleagues were 30, and maybe some in their late 20s, and maybe 40s. And I was green, I didn't know a lot, but what I was used to doing is going to my faculty and asking questions. Here, like that happened here. Office hours, don't think I would have had that resource or maybe the gumption if it was like a gigantic school and I didn't really know my professors. But here, the door was open and I got used to, let me ask for feedback. And so when I started, I didn't know what I was doing in pharmaceutical sales, but I went to my manager or I went to people who'd been doing it for a while, and I asked for advice. And it's crazy, when you ask for advice, people usually give it. Hey, tell me about this. I think you're really good at this. Tell me. And like, they were opening the playbook to me in those first couple of years at Eli Lilly, and it's like, well, where did that come from? I did it at Sienna. So the first big one I'd go back and tell myself is, there's another one for your question, is ask for help. I want you to think, man, for 5 years I taught people don't just lecture. I taught people don't just lecture and get the audience involved. So I want you to think, everybody think, Mom and Dad, play along, please. Just think for a second about who an important mentor was in your life. Just think about it for a second, and then tell somebody sitting next to you. Just take 30 seconds and do this. Thank you. Learning. Okay. Who comes to mind? I want to hear from a couple people. Who comes to mind, guys? Either one of you. Your dad. Good. What brings him to mind? Cool. Good. Okay. That's fair. Ladies? Good. Al Sandifer. Good. And I want to, what did you think, Coach?
It was a lot of help when I first became an AD.
Cool. My friends in the back? The CEO. And?
My first boss after college was sporting events.
Yeah.
He opens a lot of doors, I think. But the parents, obviously, it's the number one course and outside of you.
Thank you. Cool. Now, what about you, Mom? I have to ask this question. I don't think I've ever asked you this. Thanks. Cool. For 5 years, I taught public speaking classes at all these companies that sound impressive. And the one I'll probably remember more than any was I did an open enrollment class in Detroit. I flew back to Detroit like 2017. And in the class was my mom. She came, we gave her a ticket, and my best friend, and this is a Sienna alum right here, Will Debro. Yeah, who I met my freshman year here, as well as my friend Frank from high school and my brother were in attendance. And that's one of those pinch me moments. Like I got to teach my mom how to be a speaker. Okay, thank you. Next one is, so the first one was find a mentor. Second one is fail and learn and keep going. I haven't told this one today, so if you've seen me speak a couple times, here's a new one. When I was at Own the Room, public speaking expert, one of our clients was Twitter. And one of the first gigs I got where I'm going up and leading this room full of people, 50 plus people at Twitter that were high up. They were like, hey, this guy, Tim, is gonna, the company says to Twitter, this is our guy. He's gonna come in and knock your socks off for 3 hours. I was brand new. And I'd spoken a lot since I was here, but I did not see myself as an expert. So this was a hurdle. And I'd done it a few times already with the company, but something was off on this one. We got squeezed on time. Thought we had 3 hours, and just before it, the session before us went over. So now we have 2.5 hours. And it was me and a colleague co-facilitating in front of these people. And at a certain moment, this is the fail. At a certain moment, my colleague looks at me and throws it to me unexpectedly. And I'm looking, and I didn't know where she was leaving it. I froze. I did not know what to say. And I'm looking at 50 leaders at Twitter that are staring back at me. And I'm thinking, you're the expert. You're supposed to be the expert. Get it together. And I think, what would I tell somebody? Pause. Move over here. Let me just go get something over here. And I'm looking at the table, time's ticking, 10 seconds now of I don't know what's going on. I can't think of where I'm supposed to go. I'm sweating now. I come back over to her. It's probably been 15 plus seconds now of silence, and now they're starting to be like, oh, he's cracking. Like, it's really happening. And I mumbled to her and I said, I don't know where we are. Can you just take it back? Which is like totally human, right? What's the problem with that? That was the lesson I learned. And she goes, oh yeah, and she took it. And now I'm thinking, oh crap, I still have 2 hours left. Like, I have to come back in like 20 minutes. And it's my turn again to run for like 40. The next 40 minutes are going to be mine. I'm drenched in sweat. I am thinking, I want to get in this is downtown San Francisco. I want to get in a cab and go home and pretend this chapter never existed. I didn't ever work here. This was great. I learned a couple things. Let me retreat back into my life. I called my mom I didn't live in San Francisco yet. And when it's really bad, I'm calling mom. I mean, I was after this, I'm like, Mom, I can't believe what just happened. And she's like, it's okay, talking me down. And all I could think about was, when I get that feedback from them, they're gonna fire me. Like, they're gonna see, like, he's not ready for this. The feedback's gonna cry. It was like an Uber rating, like they give you 5 or 1, or well, I'm gonna get a 1-star rating. It's over. So I'll tell you what happened with the rating, but before, I actually had to get back up. And this is what I told myself. I said, what else can I do but just be myself right now? Like, what else can I do but connect and try? And so when it was my turn to come back, I walked back in front of everybody, and I could see a couple smartasses that were like, oh, let's see what he does now. Like, let's see if he breaks. Like, this is gonna be fun. And I was like, all right, I gotta steady myself for a good 30 seconds. Like, just get their attention back, and I'm not gonna break. I know what I'm doing. And I did. And for the rest of the 2 hours, as I led them, all I did was try to care and connect. Just be there with them and do the best I could. So when I got the feedback, I remember it took about a week, and the feedback scores came in, and I sat with it was in my inbox, and I'm like, I'm not gonna look at it. It's gonna crush me, and then I'm gonna get fired. And I looked at it, and I saw that I actually got really high ratings, higher than the person I was even with, and she didn't screw up. So what just happened? Like, how did that happen? And I realized at that point, people don't care if you screw up when you're speaking. People don't care. Actually, in a way, it humanizes you. You become more human and more like everybody else when you screw up. And it's not what you do in the screw up, it's do you bounce back? And do you care? And they were rating me. Everybody in that room knew I screwed up. Nobody wrote a comment about it, thankfully. But they were rating on, did this guy care? Did he show up? And did he work at it? Did he help me? And I did. So, it was like a fail. That was one I woke up in the middle of the night, like cold sweat. I froze in front of 50 people at Twitter. And it became probably the biggest learning I had in the time at Own the Room of, now I teach people, what do you do when you screw up in front of people? And I refer back to that lesson of like, just keep going. It humanizes you. So that's one example of fail. Here's another example. We talked a lot about what I would want to know if I'm the students here is, how do you get your first job? This is great that you're at Stripe now, you're 41. Like, how do you get the first job? Because the first job was by far the biggest leap. I mean, I was punching out of my weight class to get into Eli Lilly. So how did that happen? And it's about failing. These are rejection letters. That's a lot of rejection. And Thanks for not throwing these out when I moved out, Mom, but I was able to go back. Why are you keeping these, Tim? Why do you keep these? At the time, it was like a chip on my shoulder thing. It was like, all right, Franco Public Relations Group in Detroit, Michigan. I'll show you. All right, Sun Microsystems is my favorite one. Sun Microsystems, which is the thing, the container that we held these in all these years. Sun Microsystems is now it's defunct. It's under, and it's the place where Facebook's headquarters is. And Facebook keeps the Sun Microsystems logo on the back of their sign as a reminder to them about don't get too big. Like this can happen to us. I'm like, you guys rejected me. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I got an offer from Facebook this year. So I was like, hey, it all kind of came around. So the reason I brought the rejection letters is because I failed many times trying to get a job. I tried my 4th year to get an internship, never got anything, ended up painting houses and really having fun. I recommend it. It was a good, fun summer job. I painted houses because I tried and struck out more times than I could count to get an internship. Even one of them, I remember when I had my ankle surgery. I had surgery on this ankle because I sprained it so much. And I kept trying to rush back because I thought I had something to prove about being tough, you know, come back from your ankle. So I got ankle surgery, and one of the internship interviews came 2 weeks after surgery. So I'm definitely still on pain meds at that point. And I'm like, I'm gonna go to this interview. I'm gonna show the initiative I have with crutches. And I put on the only suit I owned and went across Troy and crutched my way in. And they gave me one piece of paper and said, this is a 1-page ad. What would you edit it? I said, okay, I can do that. I'm an English major. I helped Brother Frank edit papers. So I started, there were typos and like obvious things I was supposed to catch. And I'm circling them, and I'm using the MLA. I'm using all of the tricks that you do in English, like the circle. You put a squiggly line underneath a typo and you do that. I don't even remember them anymore. But I'm going to town on this 1 page, absolutely lighting it up. I'm having a field day, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like they're gonna love this. So I hand it over to them, crutch out, and I'm thinking, all right, I finally got the internship. A week later, the rejection letter comes. Did not get the internship. Turns out that maybe they didn't want a 21-year-old telling them they did 50 things wrong on the one ad. It's like, your font is off here. This image is wrong. This should be here. You misworded that. Typo here. Okay, catch the typos, kid. Leave the rest to us. It's like, so I got rejected a lot. And this was 5th year. A lot of these are from my 5th year. I got out of school and didn't have a job 5th year. And I thought, okay, I'm going back to the paint crew. And I did. I was painting with my buddies back home for a couple weeks. And then fortunately, I got a couple more interviews and the first offer came. My brother keeps calling me. You know I'm speaking? Yeah. Sorry. So the way into Eli Lilly was failing 55 times and then succeeding. But each time I iterated. Each time, Gail Clark, does anyone remember Gail Clark? She was in the career services room, and I would go practice interview with her. And I'd show her, like, hey, here's what happened. And she'd say, all right, let's practice interview. You know, and I would schedule a time, and I would show up with a tie. And she would actually drill me like it was an interview. And I'd go through all the questions, and she'd give me feedback at the end. And she'd say stuff like, you fidgeted too much. I'm like, well, I fidget, Gail. Like, I'm a fidgeter. And she's like, well, somebody's going to pick up on frenetic energy. So you should just a note. It's just a note. And one time I came in, and she's like, you know, before your interview, you've got this hair on the back of your neck that you really should trim if you want to make a good impression. I'm like, damn. Like, okay, all right. So, I mean, but I just kept working on it. And then the last thing on fail and try, this is, see this one? Senior thesis. This was my senior thesis, and it's probably a lot thinner because I kept it, I mean, I clearly spilled water on it, and maybe the house was in a flood. But this really speaks to me when I think about fail and learn. Look at all that red. And that's Simone Yehuda. She was my advisor, and that's nothing compared to Dr. Blessing, who was my philosophy professor other than Mark. I mean, she would go to town on the papers. And so I'm thinking, I mean, and by the way, these are all revisions. Paper after paper after paper. It's take the feedback, adjust, resubmit. Take the feedback, adjust, resubmit, try your best. You think it's going to be clean. Even the last one, I think it says A-, final grade. There's blue ink all over it. It's still notes. So it's like, where did I get this notion to keep going? Here. I was doing it. My faculty were giving me feedback all the time, verbally and written notes, and it was up to me to take it. So fail and keep going. When's the last time you failed? Anybody? Anything coming to mind? What'd you learn from it? What'd you learn from it?
Make time to study more. Yeah, make time to just like study throughout time.
Yeah.
What's Spanish?
Time management is one of the biggest things you take out of here as a student athlete, I think. And so it's make more time. That's a good segue. Actually, let's take a question. Let's take a question before I get to the next. Oh yeah, how do I develop a leader's mindset? What's a leader's mindset mean to you? You'll learn, that's a teacher trick.
What does it mean to me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like a lot of people have that desire to be a leader, like that starts in your mind, but like, you know, a lot of people say it starts with thoughts, kind of thoughts to feed yourself.
That's good. Well, I think what I'm hearing from how you view leadership is if it's feeding thoughts, then it's what are your values? Because to me, being a leader, and I ask him about it all the time, my friend Will, like what's a good leader? So if you have any thoughts, I'd be interested to hear. To me, it's about knowing what you value and then being strong enough to uphold those values when it's not easy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it's hard, right? Because it's easy to do that when things are going well. Think about sports. It's easy to hold your team to a certain standard when everybody feels good and we're winning. When things get hard and people start having negative attitudes, then it's like, what are we about? Can we uphold these values? So that's the stuff I try to feed in my own head is what's important to me. And is my team getting this from me? And the biggest one for me is care about the people around me. Am I showing them that I care? How do you show them you care? Lots of ways, but tell them. Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, your value system and how you, as long as your value system's clear, you have those right foundations, like you're about trying to do the best thing, and then do it, even if it's not necessarily popular.
Yeah.
Right? That is leadership.
Yeah. From a philosophical standpoint, what do you think about leadership? Sorry, that's a cold toss over to you. Sorry. It's a heavy one.
I guess having a clear idea of your ultimate goal for the team.
Yeah. Coach, sorry, you were just pulling something. What do you think? What do you think about, like, how would you answer that question? What's a leader to you? Or what's the leader's mindset?
It takes an issue, you know, everybody wants to be followers, you know. I remember when I was in college, we'd always make fun of our college coach, you know, to be a leader, you know, and we look up to leaders, don't we?
Yeah. It's hard. It's intangible. I mean, I honestly, one of my points is find your tribe, and this guy's in the middle of my tribe, Will, and I talk to him about this kind of stuff all the time. Like didn't manage for many years. Now I manage. Now I teach managers. It's like, well, what really matters? And it's a constant dialogue inside. What matters to me, and am I sharing it? It's a good segue to the next thing I'd tell myself if I was able to transport back 20 years is own your story. How do I compete with students from graduates of Notre Dame and Michigan State to get my first job? Or how did I get the job at Stripe? Look at where these people went to school. MIT, Harvard, literally. Not just hyperbole, like they really went there. This person's a rocket scientist. Oh no, really, this person's a rocket scientist. You know, it's like, I've never been a manager training person in my life. How did this company hire me to do it? I had a good story. Like I believe in my story. I thought about it, what makes me unique for this, and I told it. So I coached people. That was my story to Stripe. I coached people for 5 years, executives. I coached the founder of Stripe when I was at Own the Room. One-on-one, me and this guy, his name's John Collison and his brother Patrick Collison. They founded Stripe when they were 20 and 22. Dropped out of Harvard and MIT to find, it's like Zuckerberg. And they really are. They are that kind of guy. And I sat in a room with one of them for 4 hours, teaching him public speaking. And this was in 2017. So when I think to myself, I haven't ever trained managers, but I trained the founder of your company. Like, that's a pretty compelling story. It's not like I'm walking around thinking of it, but I had to channel it. Like, this is, can I do this? Yeah, I can do it. But that's not the story that would matter to me if I was 20. It would be like, how did you get that first job? You're going against these people from Central Michigan and Western and all the stuff around here. Everybody that interviewed me, one of the first questions was, tell me about Siena Heights. What state is that in? I mean, these are people in Southfield. These are people in Detroit. I think the brand's gotten a lot better, honestly. A lot better since then, but it was, okay, I'm not familiar with that school. Where is that? Is that the Siena in New York? I mean, the Siena College, why? Because they make the NCAA tournament every now and then. So I'd get that question. So what was my story 20 years ago? Well, let's see. What made me different from somebody at Michigan or Michigan State? I played sports. So what did I learn from that? How to be a teammate, how to compete, how to see diverse perspectives, how to work, or use a work jargon, collaborate with people from various backgrounds with various goals, how to manage my time, discipline, how to take feedback, how to deal with failure, how to keep going when things aren't going the way you want, on and on and on. That became my story. So, how do I message that with academics? Well, that's why the good grades mattered. So it was like, okay, I learned this, and I was an honor student here, and let me package this together and tell my story. Okay, what's my major? English. Like, what are they going to do with that? Like, what are they going to do with the English major? I just got done being told for 5 years I'm never going to get a job. What is this person at Eli Lilly going to do with an English major? Well, what did I learn from it? What did I actually take out of this? My answer to that in my story became, I learned how to think critically. And I see my professor, Sherston, nodding his head.
You just took the one question I had for you. Continue to answer it, please. Yes.
What was that? What was the question?
Yeah, what kind of major would you choose for the kind of career path that you picked?
Probably English. No, I don't.
It's obvious, yes.
You know why I chose English? Because I was going to be a psych major. Whit Hames connected me to Whit Hames, Coach Smith, when I came on my recruiting visit. And I loved Whit, but I realized I think I wanted to teach. I want to go teach English and coach basketball. So I started going off to English, and then I said, maybe I should do marketing and sales. And I told Brother Frank, I think I'm going to become a comms major. And he said, that's a bullshit degree, Tim. And I quote, unquote. He said, be an English major. If you want to write, probably paraphrasing here, grow a pair and be an English major. I said, okay, yes, Brother Frank, I will be an English major. So I became one of like 3 English majors at the whole university at the time because everybody was in communications. But I don't know, I think what I would say to myself is just do what you like. Like, study something that excites you because nobody cares. Like, the criteria for my interview was, do you have a 4-year degree? That's usually it. Do you have a 4-year degree? And then Lily was, did you get a 3.0 or above? Check, check. And then from there, it's what is my story? What makes that special? Well, I learned how to think. I learned how to research. And at Stripe, I'm doing that. God, I've never seen a tech company that writes like Stripe. I mean, these people write us. We write memos on emails with citations. It's just like a dream. I wish Brother Frank, I wish Sister Pat could see what, like, the citations in your email. That means there's like, you're writing a note and then there's like a number one. And then at the bottom of the email, literally, number one footnoted with a link saying like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, in your email, like in your email. That's what happens at Stripe right now. So if you can't, so English majors, like, if you can't write, you can't advance in the company I'm in. You can't. It doesn't matter if you're an engineer or a salesperson or a trainer working with leadership. It doesn't matter. Like, you are harshly judged on your writing skills. Man, that feels good. Finally, that English degree. That English degree is getting used. Okay, own your story. Time check. Getting there. Okay. Yes.
From your perspective, working in a technology-based company, fast-moving, what is the most important skill set you would recommend?
Well, other writing's key at my company. This is a good Sienna one, because the skill set I recommend in a place that moves fast and is really scrappy, you have to be able to talk to people. And I mean, like, this is the term, cross-functional collaboration. And what that actually means is, can you go to somebody in the other department, form a relationship, and get something done? And you do that here. You do that. You can go to your professor and, like, that's cross-functional in a way. You can talk to your teammate. You can talk to somebody in the dorm. Like, that's very practicable here. But that ability to, like, obviously you need to know what you're doing. Whose question was that, by the way? Thank you. Good. Yeah. You got to know what you're doing, but the ability to get stuff done relies a lot on, can you go talk to people and have people come along with you? Thanks for the question. Okay. Last, I'm almost at time. So the last one is follow your value. Well, there's two more. I'll do two quick ones. Follow your values. And the reason that's a pillar is because when I got out of, what brought me to Sienna was I was chasing a value. Maybe it was a tunnel vision value. It was, I want to play basketball. I want to come. And this was the opportunity I got. Mike Quinn was an associate coach here many years ago and happened to be in a gym when my team had a good night and I had a good night. And he wrote me a letter, and the rest is history. You know, a lot of student loans later, the rest is history. And I came here. I chased a value to come. My parents went to Oakland and cover your ears. They said, you know, this would be a lot easier on us financially. What can we do to help you stay at Oakland? I got accepted easy, like, in. You could commute from home. Maybe we'll get you a car if you stay here and go to Oakland. Wow, that's good. That's a good deal. But no, this was my chance to play basketball, and I'm chasing this value. And thank you again, like, a million times, like, for helping me come here. It's the same thing that I've done in my career. Why did I end up a public speaking coach? Why did I end up the head coach at Dexter High School in basketball? Why am I at Stripe teaching managers? A lot of these were financially bad. These were bad moves for me with money, but I want to do this. Like, a value in me is calling me to do this. And so that's what I would, if I could go back and tell myself 20 years ago, it'd be, hey, you got a lot of years to figure out what's important and to evolve. So know what's important to you and chase the value. And the last one is find your tribe. Talked about you a lot. Here it comes again. Freshman year, welcome. I knew no one here when I came. Knew no one, and that was scary. And the welcome weekend, I met a group of guys who are my lifelong friends, and the core of that is right there. It's Will, and I think so much about who do I spend time with in my current life, and do they give me energy? Do they give me perspectives that help me or not? And I want to call out one guy in particular from when we were here that is no longer with us, that was part of my tribe, but I've been thinking about him a lot. His name's Clement Irishabandi, and he was a student that came here to a small town on the west side of Michigan from Africa, from Rwanda. And then we met him because he came to play soccer here. And about 5 years after graduation, he was diagnosed with cancer in stomach. And I was with him he lived in Miami with a couple Siena people. And he told me, I'm sick, kind of don't feel great. And then within like a couple weeks, a month maybe, it just happened so fast. And I bring this up because it's short. It can be short. And that's what makes me think even more about who do I spend time with and why, and just value every relationship that means something to me. So I'm glad I got to say his name, Clement, here once while I'm back on campus. In closing, and then any other questions, 0.62% of applicants at Stripe get an offer. It's harder to get into Harvard than it is to get into Stripe. But I started here. And for those of you who work with students, let them know like they can do this too. It doesn't have to be that. It just has to be whatever is calling them, you can do it. It's not easy. The path isn't easy, but punch and swing and keep trying. But a lot of good things can happen with the base you're forming at Siena. So be bold, keep taking shots. Thanks.
Does anybody have questions for Tim?
And thank you very much. It seems that you're a perfectionist for sure. And the first question is, how do you balance life? And do you believe in balance actually? Or do you think if you want to reach some professional goals, you should actually still 70% concentrate on that, or 90 or more? I mean, do you believe in balance even? And the second question is, could you elaborate a little bit on emotional intelligence as well, how to control your emotions, and even though if you're passionate, but I mean, just elaborate a little bit on the emotional intelligence and your journey on that. I guess.
Can you remind me of the second one after I start the first one? Yeah, the first one is, what's my view on balance? Yikes. My wife Allison's not here. She might have a different perspective on my balance than I do of my own. The founder of the Own the Room company, who was a mentor to me too, a guy's name's Bill Hoopterp, and his line really stuck with me. He said, you can have all the things you want, just not at once. That's really good. So it means I can do all the things, but not all at the same time. And right now, what I do to balance, well, the things in my life are my family, my job, and staying healthy. And that's pretty much it. There have been times where, when I was a basketball coach especially, there wasn't much balance at all. It was a full-time job and then a basketball coach, and props to you for doing that too here. But now that I'm a parent, I know I see balance differently, because I get about 2 hours with my daughter every day, and it's from as soon as I get home until bedtime. And if my focus is on the messages I'm getting from work or like finishing the project late, it's more valuable to me to be with her for those couple hours. So I think the balance thing's evolved with me. Does that answer the question?
It does evolve.
It changes based on the phase. I mean, I was pretty obsessive about, when you have 55 rejection letters that you have 20 years later, there's something's different, weird. I mean, yeah, but I had no family, and I was probably single at that point, and it was just a different phase. And my wife and I, the way we approach it is we're kind of like, all right, this is a sprint. Like this moment right now, we're in a weird sprint. Right now, I didn't mention this, I'm getting my certification in executive coaching. And so it's like, wow, that's another thing. We're sprinting through this phase, and then we're going to hopefully pause and breathe. What was the other one? Emotional? So how have I transformed?
Yeah, how you and when you're working with, what are some of the recommendations that you also?
For people on emotional intelligence?
Yes.
I'm not sure. There's a lot of directions. What do you mean by emotional intelligence?
Just, I guess, controlling some of those in an organizational setting, so being self-aware and knowing that going back to this figures being aware of. Because I know that emotional intelligence is very important right now. IQ. So I don't know if you talked about it with your executives. Coaching.
Yeah.
Since they're leaders and they, because verbal, non-verbal is very important to emotions. I just
Probably not great to like for a quick answer, but the thing that comes to mind is the ability to read the room. The people I'm working with, who reads the room well? Teachers, I think. Teachers and coaches read the room well. So that's where I developed emotional intelligence, was talking to my team every day at practice and seeing, are my teenagers paying attention or not? Are they upset? Like picking up on those cues. And then also in sales, I'm doing the same thing with my customer again and again and again, customers, and picking up on it. Teaching it in others or things to look for in others, it's a tough one. Probably a longer conversation. We could maybe after. Yeah. Well, anybody else?
I was just wondering, what do you think it was about your application to Eli Lilly that finally somebody said, well, let's give this kid a call.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's an important thing to say. It wasn't an application to Lilly because they would have never called me. No one called me when I applied cold. I met him at a job fair. And I met him at a job fair after going to another job fair and failing miserably or just awkwardly just not getting it right. And so I came back to the job fair as a fifth-year senior, and I saw all of these kids that were exactly me a year ago, like nervously in their suit, trying to make an impression at the booth, and I failed. I failed, and then I went back to the job fair the next year, and here's what they saw. The line at Lilly was like 12 deep, kids waiting with the resume, and I watched all of them, and I'm thinking, okay, the same thing. They're trying to here's the pitch, like here's how they're trying to present themselves. Do something different. I don't know what that's going to be, but when I get up there, I just have to do something different. So when I went up to the front, I got to the front, and the recruiter standing there, and she said, "Hi, why Lilly?" And I said, "I was going to ask you the same question. Pfizer's there, Johnson's over there, and why should I be in this line?" And I probably didn't even do it with that much. Like, it wasn't an arrogant thing at all. It was just like, why should I be excited about? Why should we be excited about Lilly? And she goes, "I'm glad you asked that question." And she started talking for 5 minutes. And then at the end, where I didn't even say more than that, she said, "We'd like to invite you back in the afternoon for your first interview." And so all of the kids who walked away, they didn't get interviews. Maybe one or two of them did. But it was a connection. It was like being something different. That was what started it. Yeah. But they definitely didn't reply to my application. No one did. No one, including now. 3 months ago, I was in the job market. Nobody applied. Nobody replied to my application. The people I knew, they took my call. Like that's how, when I connected with somebody in person, then it happened.
How have you, you've obviously made some different career shifts in your life. How have you known when to do that, and what are those reasons for you?
Feeling value that's not being fulfilled anymore. At Own the Room, I would loved Own the Room. I loved teaching. But I was growing the business also. I was vice president of product management, and I was running the West Coast office. And I just got to a place where I thought, I've gone as far with this as I think I want to, and a value in me wasn't being met to what I wanted anymore. And so I was like, all right, it's time to find something new. And that's been it. The other drivers have been that value. When I was in sales, it was, I want to be a basketball coach. Can I do this with this job? I better find a sales job that lets me coach basketball. It's just something in me where I was like, it's time to go. But it was about like a value every time. Got your question answered. You answered your question.
Yeah, I had reviewed your career path. I had reviewed your career path on the alumni Facebook page and wondered if I were a faculty advisor, which I was for many, many years, and a freshman came to me and said, this is what I want to do with my life. What should I major in?
Oh, okay. That's a different way to ask that question.
You pretty
Yeah.
much answered that, yeah.
Yeah. Do what makes you happy. Yeah.
I would like to know, what was the topic of your English thesis, and did the writing of it seem to you at the time or afterwards to have taught you something beyond
Oh, wow.
the topic?
Thank you. I have it here. Can I just deliver it again? It was called Materialism in 20th Century American Literature. It was, that was the best reaction I've ever gotten on that live. It was, including my senior thesis. I don't think anybody, like, huh? It was, wow, this is the final page. There's still red all over it. Look at this. I got an A. It was why this is because I was struggling with, do I want to try to make money like Gatsby or Babbitt, Sinclair Lewis's Babbitt, which were the two of the books I looked at for this, and like implode or like lose myself as I seek that? Or do I want to go this direction and just find something that makes me happy? That was the thing I was asking in my own life. And so it taught me a lot. And it took me about 10 years to figure out, because I tried to go Gatsby in the beginning of my career. I thought that was what I was supposed to do. And I wasn't happy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not linear either. I wish I could tell myself that. It doesn't have to be one or the other. This is going to be my most underwhelming answer of the night. I mean, my favorite book, it changed. Because when I was here, I loved short stories, probably because of my attention span. I loved John Updike, short stories. Brother Frank used to have us read them a lot. But really, the books that I like, John Wooden's book is my favorite book. The book is called Wooden. It's like Lessons on Life from the legendary basketball coach from UCLA. And that is my favorite book. It's like a handbook for, I think, what's important.
You said when you were giving that speech to Twitter, you were up there going, they're going to realize I'm a fake. They're going to realize that I'm not ready for this. In your new role, because this is a really new role, now that you're the manager and in charge, do you feel that same way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still do sometimes. Yeah, but it's like an internal talk of like, come on, you've done this before. Mm-hmm. But I feel that way sometimes. And guess who else feels that way? The chief operating officer of our company, probably the CEO, the president. I mean, I actually coach them and find out that when they're in a closed door room and can talk to me in a safe space, they are feeling the same thing. Like, somebody's going to find out I don't belong in this job. I shouldn't have been hired for this. And so it's like a lot of people feel that way. I just try to, to me, it's a self-talk now. It's like, come on, you can do this. You got this. You've done more. You've done harder. Like, just be there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I have one. So self-doubt, when we're working with students and they're going through a lot of self-doubt with their job or their new internship, what would you recommend we tell them? Because a lot of times, we have those kinds of conversations with them.
You're setting yourself up for your career. Mm-hmm. Self-doubt is part of the deal. You can say, I just saw this guy named Tim come in and admit he doubts himself at work, and he's at a tech company. You're setting yourself up. So self-doubt's part of the deal, but get through it too. Get self-doubt and get through it.
Since you work in a tech company and you went to liberal arts school too, and you see all the people with technical skills, I guess, too, and with all the artificial intelligence and all the changes that are coming and professions changing potentially too, what are the skills, again, the skill set you, we already discussed that, but how do we really, I guess it's so challenging to find the profession at this time, you know, not knowing with artificial intelligence and all that, that it could change. So what is your advice potentially? And again, from that standpoint that you do work at a tech company too, and you see the insight of it too.
Communication. Like human to human communication is more important now maybe than ever because of all that stuff. So the ability to go cross-functional, like go talk to somebody in the office and like connect and then get something done. I think that's more important now than ever. So wow, that's great for liberal arts too. Having diverse perspectives, like being able to see holistically. Maybe AI will be able to do that part, but the human to, in our lifetime, I hope, like human to human stuff, decisions are gonna be made that way and stuff's gonna get done. So writing, communication.
What was your coaching philosophy when you coached basketball?
Yeah, I know, you are. It evolved. Coach Smith and I were talking about that today. When I was really young, it was win. It was terrible, like the wrong thing. I was focused on the result, and I thought that because we won all the time, we won. So like that's what you do, you win, and that's why you know you're good. It's complete opposite. Like by the time I was at Dexter, which Dexter's right near Ann Arbor, if you haven't heard of it. Dexter was the last probably 3 years I coached before I hung it up to move back to California. And it was about it was about caring. It was about showing them that I care. And part of caring is being tough, like telling the truth or giving like the feedback or pushing them. But it was care. And I think as I got some age, like I got older, I started to see them after high school more and more, and after college even, and you're like, wow, this is way bigger than this ridiculous game. This is way big. No, it's not a ridiculous game. I still love the game, but it's just bigger than this. It's about a lot more. The game is this, and I was looking at like the actual score in the contest, and that I want to win. I'm competitive, but it's about caring. So does that sound too soft? Yeah, I say that at Stripe, at my company. I say, what's our management philosophy? Care. You want to be a good manager? Care. Before all else, if you care, you make time to connect with your people, and you make time to give them feedback, and you make time to set them up for career success, and you make time to tell them the hard stuff if you care. Anybody else?
Anyone else?
These are good ones.
Okay, well, we have a lovely reception in the lobby, and Tim will be coming out to speak with you all out there if you have some questions you'd like to ask him one-on-one. And thank you so much, Tim.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.